Story 1. I was thinking about it, and I would be happier getting a role for being fat or ugly than losing a role for not being attractive enough. Story 2. I work at a theater school. The acting students are typically striking in some way. Beautiful, gaunt, unsettling, or kind. The larger students are usually a bit big but also very strong and agile. Students others call ugly are uniquely interesting, not merely less attractive than their peers but distinctly so. They are both the same distance from plain, but in different directions. This is often a selling point and they know it. Someone who looks heavy and lazy but has the stamina to perform all day is an absolute prize. Someone whose selling point is a train wreck of a face knows exactly what they look like and, combined with strong performance skills, has a very sellable product. Remember that most roles have an audition process. You subscribe to or ask your agent to watch for roles you are confident you can play. Most actors are not after Juliet or Hamlet. They pursue roles that fit their appearance and skill set. For example, the role short, plump, ginger-haired woman with a maternal smile in her late 40s will attract certain actors, just as the role Hispanic, unattractive, more than 50 pounds overweight man with a lazy eye or missing teeth will attract others. You apply for the roles. Professional actors are confident self-starters seeking jobs that pay, get them seen, and let them show their range so they can continue building their career. Story 3. I spent a few years in Los Angeles going to auditions. I was cast in roles such as an overweight jogger, a man with a beard, and a man waiting in line for donuts. That last role was actually more of a hipster part, which many of my auditions tended to be. It was not that awkward, and I got to know a lot of men who looked like me from seeing them at the same auditions. The most awkward audition was for a Polish tire commercial in which I had to be topless. Story 4. David Harbour from Stranger Things auditioned for the role of the Blob in one of the X-Men movies and was told he was too fat. Story 5. I've been a professional actor for over 20 years, and I can say I'm not awkward at all. If you have an interesting look and you signed up and showed up for a casting call, you know the deal. Ugly actors are not less smart or self-aware than good-looking ones. For example, little people or dwarves get into acting knowing they are more likely to be cast as an elf in a Christmas special than to end up like Peter Dinklage, but they want to act regardless. Bottom line, we are all too needy and self-obsessed to feel awkward, even the ugly ones. Story 6. Not quite the same thing, but I saw an advert where they were looking to film in a bedsit, so I got in contact and the location scout came around to see my place. The film was the low-budget drugs drama London to Brighton, listed on the Internet Movie Database, and they wanted a bedsit for where the two lead characters lived, who were both heroin addicts living in abject misery without a penny to their name. They did not use my place in the end, but the location scout said, "It was almost perfect. The only problem is that it's too small." That made me feel great about where I lived back then. Story 7. I read that the actress who played Dolores Umbridge was told by a friend, "Oh my God, you would be perfect for that role." Then she read that Umbridge was described as toad-like in the books and thought, "Wow, thanks." Story 8. I have thought about this a lot, especially regarding children. In Desperate Housewives, the little girl who was labeled the fat kid, Eva Longoria's character's child, was the focus of that storyline, I am pretty sure. How does a small child grow up with self-esteem when what she is known for is being the fat kid on that television show? Story 9. Ugly people who become actors have moved beyond tying their ego to their appearance. Story 10. Former casting director in Hollywood for 13 years, working for home box office, Netflix, and every major network, plus international commercials. It is not awkward. It is a business like any other, and every role has a place and is important. The actors know that. I never encountered an actor who did not want a part. They know any role can boost a career, whether in commercials, music videos, television shows, or film, all of which I cast. Actors were excited about the pay and the opportunity to do what they loved, make connections on set that could lead to more roles, and advance their careers. The breakdown for a role, also known as the job listing, never says ugly. Like every industry, Hollywood has its own vocabulary. Hollywood ugly is not the same as ordinary life ugly. Characters described as ugly usually have specific traits: funny, charming, devious, conniving, that the actor must portray. It is rarely just about appearance. A listing might read, age 50s to 60s, character actor, quirky, fun-loving, followed by a short summary of key traits and context. Professional actors understand this and audition because they want the work. It is not a bait and switch. Overwhelmingly, almost all actors I cast were a joy to work with, about 98%. Only about 2% were not, and some of those you have read about in the press. Many actors returned for repeat roles, including character parts. I always treated every cast member with kindness and respect, regardless of appearance, because I knew the value each person brought. I was grateful for their hard work. They helped the whole project come together and made everyone happy. Casting directors root for the cast. We are just as excited behind the scenes to see actors succeed as they are to play the role. That includes all actors, young, old, glamorous, or character actors. We celebrate each person's success equally. Fun fact: networks typically draw the line at teeth. It is a running joke. The National Broadcasting Company, the American Broadcasting Company, and others may not object to missing limbs or hair, but they prefer actors to have all their teeth. For American audiences, that seems to be one thing that can make viewers change the channel. Regarding casting children, I never accepted roles that would demean a child. On moral and conscience grounds, I would not cast an unattractive kid role. Parents of child actors can be difficult, and I did not want to contribute to that problem. During my career, I cast only a few projects with children, and I chose projects that were fun, encouraging, and where the child would enjoy filming and be proud of the experience. I cast the little girl in the music video So Good to Me by Chris Malinchak. Filming involved playing with a giraffe for a day. It was fun, and the child enjoyed the experience. Thank you to everyone for the recognition. Casting was a real joy. Finding diamonds in the rough and helping some of them on their path to great careers, amazing roles, and touching people through their art and the characters they played. It is a special kind of magic, and I was happy to be part of it. Now I get to sit back and watch my friends who are still in the business continue that work. Story 11. To answer the question directly, it is not awkward. People will absolutely jump at the chance to be the ugly one. They do not really care. It might be mentally awkward for them, but it is nothing personal. They know it is just another job opportunity. Like the classic meme says, if someone paid you $200 but had to call you ugly, would you take it? Of course. I am ugly, not stupid. Edit. For what it is worth, the main point is that it is an audition for the role of an ugly person. It does not mean you are actually dreadfully ugly, just as British characters in movies are not required to be played by British actors. Story 12. I knew a male actor I have not seen in years who was always typecast in certain character roles because of his distinctive looks. He had a pretty successful career, but when he told me about his roles, I could not help but notice that he carried a certain sadness at not being the heroic figure that everyone loves. He had come to terms with his predicament. Becoming an actor was partly a reaction to being an outcast and bullied, but there remained a longing to be beautiful, loved, and admired. Story 13. I was watching the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode in which Larry thinks he is being seated in the ugly section of a restaurant. I wondered how those actors felt knowing they were cast as the people in the ugly section. Story 14. My friend works part-time as an actor. He plays rat-faced bogans and other unpleasant characters. He knows he's a 5 in good lighting. The film industry intentionally makes him a 3 on camera. He doesn't mind. It's a job, and he knows the limits of his face. Story 15. I wanted Mary and on Gilligan's Island to be ugly for television. Not Cornelius on Planet of the Apes ugly. Story 16. I remember watching an episode of Game of Thrones that featured a brothel in one scene and Walder Frey's ugly daughters in another. I wondered which role would be the harder call for a young actress. Hey Mom and Dad, I got the part. They said I would be perfect to play a hideous, completely undesirable woman. Or, hey Mom and Dad, I got the part. They said I would be perfect to play a naked, writhing prostitute. Story 17. Wore my eye patch to a casting call that was requesting facial deformities or other injuries. A woman came up to me and asked what was under the patch. When I showed her that there was, in fact, no I got to jump ahead in line. I was cast as a fucked up soldier extra in a Revolutionary War show. I had smallpox one day, lay in the infirmary the next, and got stuck in the mud another day. The food and pay were pretty good. It was a neat experience. All that to say, no one has an iota of shame. Own that shit. Story 18. Hello. I have made a few indie low-budget films, acted in several, and assisted on crew. From what I have seen, those in charge were straightforward about what each role entailed. The first role I was ever cast in was a small part in an independent slasher film. I was told I looked like a smarmy jerk, and once I started acting the part, they cast me immediately. For whatever reason, I always look brooding or like I am glaring, the male version of resting bitch face. They did not mean it in a bad way. When they discussed my look, it was always for the sake of the camera, and once they got to know me, they learned I am easy to get along with. Talent combined with that certain look led to inquiries about my availability to play villains, bullies, corporate shills, and so on. It is not much, but it is honest work. The same applies to other roles. If a role needed a bigger person, once the casting crew found candidates, they were straightforward about the role. They were respectful. Transparency was key, so everyone felt comfortable on set, especially if those characteristics became the butt of a joke. To be frank, I have never met an actor who was delusional about their appearance. They understood the camera is objective. That is my experience, though others may disagree. Story 19. There is a model agency in London called Ugly. I imagine everyone knows what that entails. More generally, by the time they leave acting school, most actors will have figured out whether they are likely to play Juliet. People who are larger know their appearance and make career decisions on that basis. It is a bit like playing villains. You tell the stories by playing the roles the stories demand. In some cases, an attractive person will be made unattractive using makeup and prosthetics. If necessary, you could do the same for a less conventionally attractive person to protect their self-esteem. Story 20. I remember that when I was a child, I was offended to be cast in the ugly or funny roles. The old lady pirate in Pirates of Penzance, the funny sidekick, or the one who could not sing in a chorus line. When I became a drama teacher and started casting, I realized that from the point of view of the teacher, you give the ugly or funny roles to the genuinely talented students, the ones you know can pull them off. It is actually much easier to play an attractive romantic lead than to play a goblin, a witch, or a troll. Now, I try to remember that students cast as the ugly character are probably going to be upset that they did not get the sexy romantic lead with the sweeping ballad. I try to reassure them that they got the part not because they cannot play the romantic lead, but because no one else was good enough to play their role. Story 21. I saw a video on YouTube of talk show hosts and interviewers fat-shaming Jonah Hill, calling him unattractive because he is often cast alongside people like Channing Tatum and Brad Pitt, and generally making fun of him. It was very uncomfortable and clearly bothered him. He has recently lost a lot of weight, so I am happy for him. Story 22. Joaquin Phoenix is a handsome man, except when he is not. Commodus, I am talking to you. Story 23. As a talent representative, most actors are self-aware enough to know their type and how Hollywood perceives them. Weirdly enough, it is the pretty actors who have issues, not the character actors. Most character actors really enjoy being character actors because they get the fun roles. They enjoy uglifying themselves for auditions. Whenever my roommate, who is older, plump, and average-looking by Hollywood standards, gets an audition that requires someone ugly or fat, she loves it. She says, "Awesome. I don't have to shower or wear makeup today, and I get to let it all hang out." For the most part, character actors do not take the descriptions personally. Story 24. I am pretty sure Casper Van Dien and Denise Richards were both cast in Starship Troopers specifically because they were conventionally physically attractive but also clearly dead behind the eyes. I wonder if they ever realized. Story 25. Somewhat related. I dated a guy I thought was stunning. He was an 8 even just getting out of bed. He was an aspiring actor. The problem was that he was Arab with dark skin, very dark eyes, and wavy black hair. He knew he would often be typecast into certain roles, many of which would be unflattering, such as terrorist roles. He knew this, but he was excited anyway because he wanted paid work and he loved acting. I imagine it is similar for people who are cast in roles that are conventionally considered unattractive. Story 26. During middle school, we performed Mulan, and I played a man at the beginning whom Mulan was forced to marry. My drama teacher did not tell me that in the script Mulan literally says, "Ew, I don't want to marry him, he is ugly." As you can imagine, that was a massive blow to my self-esteem, especially in middle school when puberty and hormones were acting up. Looking back, I wonder what my drama teacher would say if she saw me now. Story 27. Believe it or not, some people make a nice living from ugly looks. I had a friend of many years who played the bad guy on every police and private investigator drama in the late 1960s and the 1970s. He was so far removed from the pretty gene pool that it was not funny. He appeared on Hawaii Five-0 about 6 times in 11 years and no one noticed. He once told me that Forrest Tucker from the television series F Troop told him, "Even Hollywood needs its ugly people." Story 28. Attractiveness depends largely on behavior, posture, styling, and other factors. Successful actors who are cast in unattractive roles often look perfectly fine in real life. Story 29. I cannot answer this, but if anyone is looking for an overweight 40-year-old male with flyaway hair and a bald spot at the back, give me a call. I would classify myself as more goofy-looking than ugly. As my wife said on our wedding day, I will take what I can get. Story 30. I have worked in casting before. It is funny to see a room of people who look remarkably similar. Redheads, chubby bald men, twins, middle-class, skinny, blonde, white women, and men who look like wizards. I hope they have their own WhatsApp groups. Story 31. I have cast clinical trial training videos, so I need very specific types, including actors portraying mental health conditions or obesity. For the role requiring a body mass index over 30, I knew a musician friend who fit the bill. It was awkward, to be honest. I thought he would be great, but toward the end of the conversation I said the role required a high body mass index, and he laughed and said, "Don't worry, I'm still fat." I tried to be polite. To be fair, his stage name includes Big. For Tourette's, that was sensitive as well. I needed a child actor, so I asked at my local children's theater. The director recommended a boy who was a phenomenal actor and singer and mentioned that he had a head tick. He sounded perfect even without the tick. I called his mother. She seemed happy to have him act for us. When I mentioned the role was for a child with Tourette's, she shut me down and did not want to be contacted. I hired a girl we often used, but she could not convincingly play a tick. It made me sad because these were training videos for clinical investigators. I wish that boy and his mother could have felt more proud of being properly represented. He really was a great actor and singer who happened to have Tourette's. Story 32. To be honest, as a professional actor, it is much easier to get roles if you have an interesting look. Some call it ugly, but it is basically a face that a casting director who sees hundreds of people every day will remember. Good examples are the actress who played the lead in The Queen's Gambit and Benedict Cumberbatch. They were not typecast as ugly, even though their looks are not part of the mainstream ideal of beauty. It is also worth remembering that makeup can make an average-looking person appear either unattractive or drop-dead gorgeous, and on a shoot you have a whole team ensuring you glow. There are plenty of naturally good-looking actors, and some of the prettiest women I know have had the hardest time finding roles because there are hundreds of other gorgeous white, blue-eyed brunettes with long hair who do not stand out from the crowd. I have a rather specific look and often get auditions for niche characters. I am one of about 20 people in the United Kingdom who match those briefs. Agents' websites usually send castings for pretty women in their 20s with portfolios of 10 or more clients, including me even if I have a different look. For calls for a woman with short hair or a black nerdy boy, they often have only one person who matches the brief. Story 33. Casting calls I have seen have been straightforward, looking for a large, bald, middle-aged man to play a gross, chicken-eating neighbor. Story 34. If the television show Ugly Betty taught us anything, it is that people portrayed as unattractive on television are far less unattractive than people in real life. Story 35. I attended a taping of American Idol. As we were going through the line, they were handing out tickets. When I got to the front, they gave me tickets from the back of the pack. I noticed, but it did not register immediately. When we reached our seats, They were in the back row even though there was plenty of seating available in the middle rows. Story 36. My friend in Los Angeles auditioned for a role that only required a large, hairy butt. He got the part and was paid $300 for about 30 minutes of work that day. Story 37. I heard studios sometimes include clauses requiring actors and actresses to remain overweight for a role. For example, Rebel Wilson was reportedly cast as the fat, funny friend, and after she lost weight, she could not play those parts. I always thought she looked beautiful whether heavier or thinner. It is wrong to prevent someone from losing weight for a movie contract. At the same time, actors and actresses often follow extreme diets and exercise regimens for roles. Story 38. This made me think of an interview I once saw with Dustin Hoffman when he played a woman in Tootsie. They put the makeup on him, and he said, "Wait, you're not done. You need to make me beautiful." The makeup artist replied, "This is as much as we can do." He began to cry because, for the first time, he felt the pain of women and people who were not considered attractive, and there was nothing they could do about it. Story 39. As someone who is cast in short, nerdy, ugly, or chubby roles in most theater productions, it feels nice to be wanted for once. Story 40. I'm an actor, a curvy white mustachioed man who would never be hired to sell perfume. But you know what? I have been hired as a model several times. Just because you're dumpling-shaped doesn't mean there is no place for you in the entertainment business. And if you're getting work and getting paid, fuck them. Honestly, the roles I get and audition for are usually far more interesting than they would be if I had an 8-pack and were 6 feet 1 inch of square-jawed white boy salad. Story 41. I worked in casting for 10 years. Overall, it really isn't that awkward or difficult because the talent pool comes in all shapes and sizes. Talent agencies are a big help, as they will usually contact their niche rosters for the casting call. When we held casting calls for print or commercials, producers would often request to see real people, which was always like the Wild West. We would either put out a cattle call or send an assistant to Hollywood Boulevard to recruit people off the street. We saw everyone from ordinary people to individuals with extreme behavior come in to audition. If we had to audition obese women age 45 to 65 who were amputees for a diabetes medication commercial, we generally had no problem finding them. They were more or less relaxed and easygoing. The thing is, more often than not, everyone wants to be on television even if it is a bit role. One thing we always dealt with when it came to our clients, directors, and producers was that they always wanted real-looking people, and after 2 or 3 days of testing real people they would be lukewarm and go with the model or a professional actor. Story 42. I watch a lot of British television series, and the number one reason is that they don't look like they were just spat out of the Hollywood industrial complex with hair plugs, cap teeth, Botox, and a spray tan on a skinny body. The British let it all hang out, and it's a true representation of humans. Unattractive, morbidly obese, short, tall, with imperfect teeth and wrinkles. They don't look like Stepford wives. Story 43. A comedian in Norway told a story about requesting props for a shoot for their comedy show. They said they needed a fatty, which was a common name for the large mat used when you pole vault or perform other gymnastics. The assistant misunderstood and brought an extremely overweight person to the shoot. It was an awkward conversation. Story 44. There is a difference between real-life ugly and Hollywood ugly. Hollywood ugly refers to anyone who is not a real-life 10 out of 10, or to someone who would be considered a 10 out of 10 but appears less attractive when wearing glasses. Also, remember that attractive actors win Academy Awards for playing ugly characters. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.